Welcome back to the Generally Assembled Studios. Today we have in studio Representative Sheryl Delozier and her guest Ava Green from Hampton Township, a senior at University of Delaware, majoring in political science. Representative Delozier, what are we doing here today?
Well, thanks. Appreciate the opportunity to get here and talk about some issues. And we were very lucky this summer. We had some great interns, and Ava is one of those interns. And we were talking about a number of issues in political science major at Delaware. So that's something that's of interest to her. And one of the issues that was of interest was criminal justice, which is something that I'm a very strong advocate for. A lot of the different programs that we can do and having criminal justice reform and being aware of what our needs are in the community. So Ava took that and ran with it. So I'm glad to have a conversation about what she found and what's important to her. So Ava, I'm so glad you could be with us.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I did a bunch of research over the last few weeks on criminal justice, looking into like the Clean Slate law that you brought into Pennsylvania, and along with your membership in the Criminal Justice Reform Caucus. So I just wanted to ask you just a few questions on like what made you want to get involved in criminal justice reform in the area. So starting out with my first question here, I just wanted to know, from your perspective, what motivated you to get involved in criminal justice reform here in the Commonwealth?
Well, thanks. I know that is a common question because the diversity in which is affected in our criminal justice system. Many people think of it as an urban issue and not something that would affect maybe a more rural or suburban area. And so they kind of question why a Cumberland County Republican woman would be interested in this. Mm-hmm. And I have to go back to when we started this in about 7 years ago. And I was a big advocate and have always been for victims' rights.
Yes.
And the capability of recognizing that our victims need to have a voice in the system was really why the entities that were coalescing around criminal justice reform came to me, because we need the victim's voice in any kind of reform that we do. So you talk about the far right and the far left, and you can't govern from either of those 2 points. And when you come to criminal justice reform, that is a example that is paramount, because you do need to compromise and you do need to recognize that the victims do have a voice in it, but also those that have done what it is the justice system has asked of them, served their time and or paid their fees and fines, done their probation, whatever it is that they have been required to do, they deserve and have earned that second chance.
Yes.
So in a suburban area where I am, it may not be the number one issue, but I will guarantee you that when you talk to people, just about everyone can say that they know someone who has been in the system somehow, some way. And because of that, it does affect every type of community across our state. So when they came to me and talked about it, I thought it was actually just made sense to take a look at some of our laws. And Clean Slate, I think, was one that made a lot of sense. We came to some great compromises on it, and we had bipartisan support across the board.
Yes. So someone who strongly believes in second chances as well, I really like how you stand strongly for that. So that's really nice.
No, it's great. I mean, when people earn that second chance, it's very important that you, as an individual, if you're working to better yourself, if you're working to find housing, you're working to get a better education, you're working, yes, you made a mistake.
Yeah.
And my partner, as we call it, we joked about partner in crime, Jordan Harris, but from Philadelphia, one of the things that he has said a number of times is no one should be judged on the worst day of their life. So when you make a mistake, you pay for it, and there are consequences. And that is one of the stipulations about Clean Slate, is that we are dealing with individuals that, depending on what the mistake was and what the crime was, we could be 7 to 10 years out from them having committed and been sentenced. And they have had no other interaction with law enforcement. So they have earned their right to have that second chance.
Yeah.
And in many cases, it's individuals that want to better themselves, they're now family people. They may have children now, and they may be needing to get a better job to support their family. And that's what we want. We want them back in our communities, paying taxes.
Yeah.
Government's always going to find you. Paying taxes, but being a part of that community and a part of their child's life. That's what's important. And if they have earned that right, then they deserve that.
Yeah. Essentially turning their lives around.
Correct. Then that's what we're asking of them.
So what have been some of the biggest challenges faced in implementing effective reform measures in a divided General Assembly, do you think?
I think that that's a good question, because a lot of times when we are dealing with issues, it comes back around to, is this a Republican or a Democrat issue?
Yeah.
And, the Republicans are going to do this. The Democrats are going to do this. Well, this is not one of those issues. This is an issue that we have Republicans and Democrats supporting. We have employers and labor unions supporting. They want good employees. They want good employers. And a good employer wants to recognize that these employees are some of their best workers that they've talked about, and that's why the chambers support it. The unions support it because it's jobs for individuals and good union jobs as well. So we have support on both sides. So in a divided legislature and with the different branches of government that all have to work together, one of the biggest challenges, honestly, is education. Educating that this isn't a Republican or a Democrat issue. Yeah. This is an issue that goes across the political divide that we are seeing time and time again. And that's where we have to make sure that we're out there talking about it. Yeah. And that's why even, when it was an interest to you, I'm glad to have that conversation, because the more we talk about the positives and the outcomes and how this helps people, as a legislator, you go into it and you can certainly be Pollyanna about it and say, oh, well, I just want to make the world better, and everything else, which is a valid statement. We all want to make the world better. But I will say that this type of legislation, when you see the impact on someone's life, and that legislation did that, it is a great feeling. It makes you want to do more. It makes you want to take a look at other opportunities that are out there, because again, when people work and earn that second chance, they deserve that.
So how important is public perception and education to you in driving a meaningful change in the criminal justice system? I know you kind of just touched on that, but
it is. It's absolutely, because it's not only educating, and I'll point out that it's not educating just the General Assembly or my fellow colleagues, in the House and the Senate and the governor's office.
Yeah.
It's not just that. It's educating folks like yourself that are in the community, because when they hear about this, it's, somebody would say to me, oh, you're just letting out all the criminals.
Yeah.
Well, they don't understand what the issue is, in the sense that we're dealing with someone who has been in our community for 10 years, that had been in our community for 7 years. So these are not we're not opening up the jails and saying, go free, be amongst us, kind of thing. We're not talking about that. And I know that makes people nervous, because our priority is the safety of our community. Our priority is making sure, yes, if someone does something wrong, they're going to have the consequence. But what we're talking about is they've paid that consequence and moved through the rest of their lives, and now they have earned that ability to have a clean slate. And I will also stipulate that we're talking about clean slating, which is sealing a record. It is not expunging a record, and there is a difference. So expunging a record makes the record go away. Sealing a record makes it so that if something would happen down the road and there was another crime committed, law enforcement and our judicial system have access to the record. But when you do a background check for applying for a job or housing or something like that, when you do the general public inquiry as to someone's background, it doesn't show up or prevent them from getting a job that they are probably very well qualified for. And one of the other issues that actually came up with that type of history is many of our seniors go into these living situations. In my neck of the woods, we have Bethany, we have Messiah, we have a number of those villages that are out there for our seniors. Many of those seniors have zero tolerance. So if you have any criminal record, you cannot get into housing as a senior when you're in your retirement ages and everything else. So this is not something that goes away.
Yeah.
And that's why sealing the record does help in many, many different situations.
And I do have a follow-up question to that. So when a criminal justice reform is enacted, how do you let the public know about this change, especially those who might be like directly affected by it.
That actually was part of our biggest challenge when Clean Slate first went into play.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of partners, and this job or this bill or any of the bills for that matter would not have gotten done without our community partners. We have those that are in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, like I said, all of these folks that saw the rubber hit the road with individuals with a criminal record trying to get a job, trying to get housing, trying to do what they want to do, become productive citizens. And they are the ones that brought this forward. They are the ones that also help us educate.
Yeah.
So when they're out there working with their clients, they are very much the ones that are saying, well, did you know about Clean Slate? Did you know about Clean Slate? Us as legislators, we absolutely, I have it in my emails, I have it on our website, I have it, those links. And every time I have a public event, I'm glad to talk about the Clean Slate and who is eligible. And if somebody talks to me about it, about someone they know with a record, I'm like, well, did you check if they were clean slated? Are they eligible?
Yeah.
So it's that continual conversation that has to happen. But also when we have organizations that work daily with individuals with a record, they are our best avenue for that education to make sure that they're taking a look at this, because Clean Slate happens automatically. It is not a something, and that was one of the biggest issues. In order to get any kind of record sealed or expunged, you had to use an attorney, and that was an expense that a lot of folks don't have.
Yeah.
So this is an automatic process that happens if you comply with what it is, the standards in which Clean Slate delineates, but it is absolutely, we use our community partners to get that word out.
Yeah, and I think that's something that a lot of people really need to be aware of and take advantage of.
Absolutely.
The Clean Slate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I see that you are a board member of the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency, also known as the PCCD. Can you tell me a little bit about what that commission does?
Sure. PCCD is a organization within our state government, and it leads the way in disseminating a lot of federal, state dollars that come in that deal with many issues, whether it's victims issues, whether it's gun violence, whether it's just violence in our towns and cities. The ability for us to help those individuals that have been the victim of crime, that have been the victim of a certain type of crime, and the dollars that we funnel through our state budget and sometimes through our federal government as well that come through the state. PCCD is a great organization that disseminates those dollars to the communities that need it most. So they are the ones that take a look at the applications for grants. They are the ones that go out and advertise, hey, we have some dollars to be able to help your community reduce gun violence, to reduce or to assist a victim of a crime. And this is how you apply, and this is what the standards are, and those types of things. So as a board member, many times we get a packet that's really, really thick for the board meeting because there's so many different applications and different projects that state and federal dollars can go to. And the PCCD staff work very, very hard to get out into the community talking to entities that need those dollars.
Yeah. I didn't know that they sent out dollars to these communities to help, aid for the violence that was going on there. So that's really nice to hear that these packages are going out to help these families or victims of violence and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And look, it not knowing what the PCCD does, it's kind of a behind the scenes entity.
Yeah.
So that's not unusual, but the ability for you to learn about what, how many pieces kind of to fit the whole puzzle together to get those dollars out. Many times people see our budget and know the number on the budget, but they just assume the money just goes, and so asking those questions as to how it happens to go that route is kind of a government 101 of learning what parts that we have, because like DCED in for state government is an agency that does a lot of the same thing, not on the issues of justice or law enforcement type of side, which PCCD obviously focuses on. DCED does a lot of that grants and dissemination of dollars to businesses and economic development and that. So there are a lot of pieces in our state government that facilitate helping and get the dollars out.
So in regard to House Bill 689, also known as Clean Slate 3.0, which adds to the original legislation that you authored with Representative Harris, what inspired you to put forth this legislation in Pennsylvania?
Well, we kind of laugh that we have 3.0 and that it has, when we first did it, and then we, about a year and a half later, we did 2 years probably. We did another piece of legislation to update it a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then this, we did this one. So Jordan and I always joked about. He kept saying that the first bill dealt with misdemeanors, and the ability to deal with that type of offense was the starting point.
Yeah.
What we then moved on to, Jordan kept saying that we were going to get into the felony area, which comes back to that education we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Because when folks hear felony, they think the worst, right? They think people that should be kept behind bars.
Yeah.
And what we're dealing with when we talk about low-level drug felonies is the individual that was at possibly out of high school, whether they're at college or they're not, whatever their situation may have been, and they get they're addicted in one way or another. Many times they are an individual that they themselves are fighting addiction, and they're picked up with something in their pockets.
Yeah.
But it is a felony. With a drug offense, it is a felony.
Yes. Right.
It is a non-violent felony, which is exactly what was in the original Clean Slate. All of the crimes are non-violent. They are not with a weapon. They are not anything. We have our exclusions, a list of exclusions. 3.0 did the same and kept those same exclusions with the felony. So again, we're dealing with a non-violent, low-level drug felony that we. And honestly, what got me to do that bill was talking to a lot of the individuals that would be helped by something like that, because we were talking about individuals that they, as I said, in most cases they themselves were addicted, and it was not something that they were doing to hurt anyone else. Actually, they hurt themselves the most. And now you're looking at an individual that has been strong enough to beat that addiction.
Yeah.
And now they need that second chance. And that is why when we got to 3.0, we moved it along to be able to help those additional Pennsylvanians.
Yeah.
And to point blank, the reason that I did 3.0 was talking to those that it would impact. And their family members, because that advocacy is very, very important, because to show, hey, if we did this, this is who it would help. And that's really what moved it along.
Yeah. People need to be more aware that these are felons that are hurting themselves, that you reiterated that earlier, that they are, doing crimes that are like more like drugs and stuff like that, and I think that's where people are getting confused in the community when they're being let out of jail. Like, they're not murders on the streets, and I think that's why that you're advocating for their second chances, is because they're not these horrible people that are trying to like hurt others. They want to better themselves. So.
And they are people that have served their time.
Yeah.
So the Clean Slate has absolutely nothing to do with the sentence.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with the trial. Has nothing to do with the ability to interfere with what a DA wants to prosecute on someone when a crime has been committed. This is absolutely after they have done everything that the judicial system deemed them to be required to do. Yeah. And has that is done. That is complete. He or she has fulfilled that obligation. We have now moved past that 7 years and possibly 10 years past that, where they have been out of the criminal justice system. Yeah. And they have then decided that it is that this is something that they want to do, and they want to better themselves with however they want to go about doing that. But their record shouldn't stand in their way.
I also see that you are a co-chair on the Criminal Justice Reform Caucus. So what has your experience been like being the Republican co-chair on the Criminal Justice Reform Caucus? And can you tell me a little bit about what that caucus does?
Sure. The caucus is something that we started, Camera Bartolotta and Art Haywood and Jordan and myself in the House, and the senators, Republican and Democrat, House members, Republican and Democrat, the four of us are the chairs. And honestly, it's a forum, basically. It is the capability of having folks in to talk about things that they think might be something that the Republicans and Democrats can get behind. So there have been some issues that might have leaned more left or leaned more right. We've had people come in and talk about how some change like that would impact them. So it's been very informative. We will have it meetings when we're in session, and that way folks can listen to the information. And really, the whole point is to educate. The whole point is because when you put in a bill or you put in legislation and it's cold copy in front of you with a co-sponsorship memorandum, the words that are on that page mean something possibly different to each person reading it. So when you can have the ability to educate them as to this is what our goal is to do, and what compromise can we come to achieve this objective. So having these forums, then we have individuals in the House and Senate that are educated on the issue more than just the co-sponsorship memo. So they have more information to give. They have more information to share with their colleagues that are on the Judiciary Committee in both chambers, and the ability for them to then be the educator. So the more that we can share that information, I think the better we are as legislators, but also more aware of some of the needs that are out there. And will that bill actually get to the governor's desk, or is it something that'll get done? I don't know. But maybe there's another bill that they can bring an amendment in to address an issue that is similar, but we wouldn't know that unless we have that conversation. So it's something I think that makes the point of bipartisan as well as bicameral. So I think that's what's impressive about that particular caucus, because many of the caucuses that you will see, there's a lot of caucuses out there, and we kind of joke about how many there are, but very, very few of them go across not only party lines, but also both chambers in the House and the Senate.
And then my last question for you is, so are there any other criminal justice reforms from other states that you find may work here in Pennsylvania?
Well, I will say this. As a legislator, anytime you can not reinvent the wheel, it's a good thing. So looking for other state input, what succeeded in, and I will say even with 3.0, when we were doing Clean Slate, we looked at other states and we were the first. So we were very, very proud of the fact that Pennsylvania was the very first state to have Clean Slate. And many states, over a dozen, have emulated that, and the federal government. And the ability to use what someone else has successfully gotten through into law, especially with a divided government with Republicans and Democrats behind it, that's something to take a look at. And so when we looked at 3.0, we did that and looked at other states, and that's why we modified with the misdemeanors down from 10 years to 7, because it was working in other states. And national studies show that if you haven't committed a crime and reoffended after 4 years, you're no more likely to reoffend than a person who does not have a criminal record. So those years mattered. And so other states, yes, there's other states that are out there that are pushing things. I would also throw out there that I was on the Juvenile Justice Task Force when I was the chair of the Children and Youth Committee. And I learned a lot about children in our system, those that are under 18. Now, thus far, we have not been able to attack that issue as much as I would like to. So I believe there are changes within our juvenile justice system that absolutely can have an impact. We need to talk about diversionary issues. We need to be able to give our courts some flexibility when they're dealing with someone who's 17, 16, 15 in the juvenile system. Do we want to put them into the system and then have them just transfer into the adult system? If there's a way that we can have diversionary options for a judge, then that youth may not end up in our adult system, and maybe we can divert them out of the system that the path that they're on. Let's look for ways to do that rather than indoctrinating somebody into the system and then they get out and maybe commit another crime and now they're an adult. So let's look for ways, and the Juvenile Task Force report had a number of suggestions on how to do that, and I supported those. I didn't support everything that came out of the report, But I think that, again, you need to kind of throw a lot of ideas out there and see
Yeah.
what happens. So I think our next look should be, how is it that we deal with those that are not adults
Yeah, the
and in
children.
our juvenile system, really to avoid them becoming part of our adult system.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a lot of room out there, and we'll see where it goes.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for answering all my questions.
Absolutely.
I definitely learned a lot from you. So
Well, I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thanks for doing the research, and
Yes.
it's certainly an issue that there is a lot of information out there, and I think a lot of really good examples. We were proud that Pennsylvania led the way,
Yes.
but there's still a lot of work to do. I think that we shall see where we go.
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.